I still remember the exact shade of blue in my father's eyes when he looked at me across that mahogany desk and said, "Elena, what you're proposing is worthless." The words didn't echo. They didn't need to. They landed with the precise weight he intended, heavy enough to crush, light enough to seem casual. That was 3 years ago. Today, I'm signing the final paperwork to acquire Vantage Technologies, my family's precious empire. The company that once rejected me now belongs to me. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to where it started. Growing up as Elena Vantage meant carrying a legacy before I could even spell the word. My father, Richard Vantage, built his tech company from nothing in the early 90s. My mother, Diane, was his perfect corporate partner, polished, strategic, and utterly devoted to the company narrative. And then there was my brother, Marcus, groomed from childhood to be the heir apparent. I was the afterthought, the daughter they hadn't planned for, born 5 years after Marcus when my parents thought their family was complete. Elena disrupted our 5-year plan. My mother would joke at dinner parties, champagne glass delicately balanced between manicured fingers. Everyone would laugh. I learned to laugh too, even as a child. That's what you do when you're the punchline. You pretend to be in on the joke. Despite everything, I love technology. While Marcus was being paraded through board meetings in miniature suits, I was taking apart computers in my bedroom, figuring out how everything connected. By 16, I could code better than most of my father's developers. Not that anyone noticed. In the Vantage household, technical skills were expected, not celebrated, especially from the spare child. College was my escape. MIT welcomed me with open arms, and for the first time, my ideas weren't measured against my last name. I thrived, graduated summa cum laude, and developed an encryption algorithm that caught the attention of 3 major tech companies before graduation. I turned them all down. I had other plans. I returned home with my prototype, an adaptive security system that could evolve in response to emerging threats. It was elegant, efficient, and years ahead of anything on the market. I called it Sentinel. In my naivety, I thought my father would finally see me. Really see me. The meeting was scheduled for a Tuesday afternoon. I arrived early, set up my presentation in the conference room where countless deals had been made. My mother sat with perfect posture, checking her phone. Marcus lounged in a chair, openly skeptical. My father arrived exactly on time. He was never early, never late. "You have 30 minutes, he said, not looking up from the folder he was reviewing. I began my presentation with steady hands and a voice that betrayed none of my anxiety. I explained how Sentinel worked, its potential applications, the market research I'd conducted. I showed them projections, cost analyses, implementation timelines. It was meticulous, professional, everything they had taught me a Vantage presentation should be. When I finished, the silence felt like glass, clear and breakable. My father closed his folder deliberately. "Elena," he said, "what you're proposing is worthless." My mother nodded in agreement. "Darling, cybersecurity is saturated. Vantage needs innovation, not iteration." Marcus didn't even bother with criticism. He just checked his watch and asked if we could move on to discussing the Cooper acquisition. I stood there, my life's work dismissed in less than a sentence. "You haven't even tested it," I said quietly. "We don't need to," my father replied, already turning to the next agenda item. "We know the market." I gathered my materials slowly, methodically. Something had broken inside me, but it wasn't my heart. It was the last thread of illusion that I would ever earn my place at their table. As I reached the door, my father called out, "Elena, dinner is at 7. Your mother's making that salmon you like." That was the Vantage way, devastating you professionally and then expecting you at the dinner table, all within the same breath. I nodded but didn't turn around. They couldn't see the resolution forming on my face. I didn't go to dinner that night. Instead, I sat in my apartment, staring at my prototype, thinking about all the years I'd spent trying to be worthy of a place that was never meant for me. Around midnight, my phone lit up with a text from my mother. "Your absence was noticed. We expect more maturity from you." I didn't reply. For the first time in my life, I didn't care what they expected. The next morning, I called Alexis Zhang, the CEO of Meridian Systems, one of Vantage's smaller competitors. 6 hours later, I was sitting in her office, demonstrating Sentinel. Unlike my family, Alexis asked questions. She challenged assumptions, suggested improvements, and most importantly, she saw the potential. By the end of the week, I had a contract. Meridian would develop Sentinel, and I would lead the project team as their new head of innovation. I didn't tell my family. I simply cleared out my desk at Vantage Technologies and left my company ID on my father's desk with a note that read, "Consider this my resignation." My phone exploded with calls and messages. I answered none of them. When I finally met with my parents, it was at a neutral location, a private room at the restaurant where we used to celebrate company milestones. "This is childish," my father said immediately. "You're throwing a tantrum because we didn't praise your little project." My mother added, "Elena, we've always supported your interests, but business decisions can't be emotional." I looked at them both, these people who had shaped me, and felt nothing but clarity. "This isn't emotional," I replied. "It's strategic. Meridian sees the value in what I've built. They're willing to invest in it." "Meridian?" My father's voice rose slightly. "They're barely staying afloat." "Then they have nothing to lose," I said, "and everything to gain." Marcus, who had been silent, finally spoke. "You're betraying the family business for spite." "No," I corrected him. "I'm building my own legacy because you never allowed me space in yours." The meeting ended with my father threatening to cut me off financially. I reminded him that I'd been supporting myself since college. My mother suggested I'd regret burning bridges. I told her some bridges were never meant to be crossed again. We parted without resolution, the chasm between us now officially acknowledged. The next year was the hardest of my life. Developing Sentinel for market was all-consuming. I worked 18-hour days, rebuilt the prototype from scratch 3 times, and faced every obstacle the tech world could throw at a young female developer. But Alexis stood by me, and slowly, Sentinel took shape. Meanwhile, Vantage Technologies was struggling. They'd bet heavily on a consumer electronics line that flopped. Their stock was sliding, and rumor had it my father was considering selling to one of the tech giants. I didn't take pleasure in their troubles. There's no satisfaction in watching something you once loved begin to crumble, but I didn't reach out either. Some wounds need time before they can heal. 13 months after I left Vantage, Sentinel launched. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Major corporations, government agencies, and financial institutions all wanted the system. Within 6 months, Meridian's value had tripled. My team expanded from 12 to 70. I was profiled in Forbes, named to their 30 under 30 list, and invited to speak at conferences my father had once headlined. The irony wasn't lost on me. The worthless idea my family had dismissed was now the most sought-after security solution in the industry. I saw my brother at a tech convention in San Francisco. He approached me at the reception, drink in hand, looking both uncomfortable and determined. "Dad was wrong," he said without preamble. "About Sentinel. About you." I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. "The company's in trouble, Elena. Real trouble. Dad's too proud to admit it, but we needed something like Sentinel 2 years ago." I sipped my water. "And now?" "Now we need a miracle." He hesitated. "Or a merger." I nearly choked. "With Meridian?" "It makes sense," he said. "Their innovation, our infrastructure, and client base." I studied him, looking for the condescension I'd grown up with. But all I saw was exhaustion. "Does Dad know you're talking to me?" Marcus smiled wryly. "What do you think?" 2 days later, I was sitting in Alexis's office discussing the unthinkable, acquiring Vantage Technologies. Not merging, acquiring. "They're vulnerable," Alexis said, reviewing the numbers. "And they know it. With our valuation after the Sentinel launch and the new funding round, we could make a competitive offer." I stared out the window at the Seattle skyline. "They'll never accept being bought by their daughter." Alexis leaned back in her chair. "Then, we don't tell them it's you until the papers are signed." The deal was structured carefully. Meridian would be the public face of the acquisition, but I would personally hold controlling interest through a separate investment vehicle. The negotiations were brutal. My father fought every term, demanded concessions, tried to maintain some level of operational control, but his position was weak, and he knew it. The day the final agreement was to be signed, I waited in a conference room at our law firm. My parents and Marcus would be arriving to meet Meridian's executive team, not knowing I was among them. When they walked in, my father froze mid-stride. My mother's carefully composed face cracked just slightly. Marcus looked at the floor, either hiding guilt or suppressing inappropriate laughter. With him, it was always hard to tell. "What is this?" my father demanded, looking at the lawyers rather than at me. I stood. "This is business, Dad. Not personal, not emotional, just business." He understood then. I saw it in his eyes, the realization that I had learned every lesson he'd ever taught, including the ones he never intended. My mother found her voice first. "You're behind the acquisition." It wasn't a question, but I answered anyway. "Yes, I'll hold controlling interest in the combined entity. Alexis will continue as CEO, and I'll remain Chief Innovation Officer." "And us?" Marcus asked. "You'll retain your positions for the transition period. After that, it's performance-based. Just like you always said it should be, Dad." My father hadn't moved, hadn't spoken beyond his initial outburst. Finally, he looked at me. Really looked at me, perhaps for the first time. "You did all this because we rejected your project?" I shook my head. "I did all this because you rejected me." Sentinel was just the final instance in a lifetime of being told I wasn't enough. The silence that followed felt different from that day in the conference room 3 years earlier. This wasn't the silence of dismissal, it was the silence of recognition. We signed the papers without further drama. Professional, efficient, unemotional, the Vantage way. As we prepared to leave, my father paused beside me. "For what it's worth," he said quietly, "I was wrong." I nodded. "Yes, you were." He waited, perhaps for forgiveness or reconciliation, but I had none to offer. Not yet. Some things can't be fixed with a single acknowledgement. Some wounds need more than words to heal. "I'll see you at the transition meeting tomorrow," I said, and left the room first. That was 6 months ago. The integration of Vantage into Meridian has been smoother than anticipated. My father retired 2 months after the acquisition, stating health concerns. My mother stepped down from her operational role but remains on the advisory board. Marcus surprised everyone by thriving in the new structure. Freed from our father's shadow, he's become an effective and creative executive. As for me, I no longer need to prove my worth. The company that bears my name now actually reflects my vision. The security systems I was told were worthless protect governments and global corporations. The daughter they didn't plan for now shapes the future they couldn't imagine. Sometimes life comes full circle in ways you never expect. I never set out to own my family's company. I only wanted them to see me. In the end, I had to lose them to find myself. And they had to lose everything to finally see me. Today, as I finalize the rebranding, from Vantage Technologies to Sentinel Global, I'm not thinking about revenge or vindication. I'm thinking about the scared young woman who packed up her prototype and walked away from the only world she knew. I hope she knows she was right to believe in herself. I hope she's proud of what she built from the ashes of rejection. Because I am. I am Elena Vantage, and this is my legacy. Not inherited, not given, earned through every dismissal, every closed door, every worthless judgment. The desk I sit behind now once belonged to my father, but the vision that drives this company has always been mine. Sometimes, the most painful rejection leads you exactly where you were meant to be, and sometimes, the person they called a mistake becomes the one they can't afford to lose. If you're watching this and wondering if you should give up on your dreams because someone told you they were worthless, don't. The same hands that push you away today may be signing over their legacy to you tomorrow. What's your story? Have you ever turned rejection into your greatest success? Share in the comments below, and remember to subscribe for more real conversations about resilience, ambition, and claiming your place in the world. Until next time, this is Elena Vantage, reminding you that your worth isn't determined by those who can't see your vision. It's proven by your courage to pursue it anyway.